All right, guys, what's up? It's Craig again, searching for answers. Squatcher1222 gmail.com. I told you guys we had some stuff coming. We got some interviews coming, this and that. And I know I mentioned it a million times, whatever. Uh, don't know what's happening with all that. But so instead, I'm going to bring on a guest. We'll bring on Dr. John Baranchock here. Let's see what he has to say. What's up, Doc?
Hey, how are you, bud?
I'm doing good, man. How you been?
Good. Hanging in there.
I kind of surprised you with a little intro there. I told you I'd give you more time, but
That's okay.
you know how I am. Uh, so what's up, man? I mean, let's just talk about things. I'm here. I mean, everybody knows who you are. Well, maybe they don't know who you are. Go ahead and introduce yourself. I know who you are.
Yeah,
Nobody
probably.
knows who I am.
Yeah,
Go ahead and quick intro real quick and see what we got.
sure. Probably not everybody knows me, and that's okay.
They
John
should.
I'm John Baranchok. Educationally, what I bring to the table is a PhD in clinical psychology with specialties in pain psychology and neuropsychology. What I bring to the table in terms of Bigfoot is over 300 hours boots on the ground research. Um, um, and those 300 hours are actually hours spent in the woods looking. Not that doesn't include camping and driving and all that. I've been doing this for about 6 years. Had have some medical problems. Took me out for 2 years, and now I'm getting back into it. Um, Wrote a book called Psychological Horizons in Scientific Bigfoot Research. That's currently being republished by um, Hanger One Publication. Hopefully, be out in a month or two. Can't can't hold me to any of that, but it's going to come out soon, um, and it's going to come out high tech, kind of an interactive QR codes. Is that what they are called? QR codes in the book, that kind of thing. Kind of teching the book up, and just recently finished my podcast,
Yeah.
which covered my book, which was called Grasping Sasquatch. And although I'm not doing new shows, that's still available. Um, I think through YouTube and most certainly through the Untold Radio Network. Glad to be here. Honored to be on your show. I think you've got an awesome show and format here.
I'm just trying to. I've got to, like we've talked a million times. Our conversations usually run hours long. I have too many questions, and that's the whole reason for this. And I know there's people out there like me, and I even reached out to people. I just said, "Hey, man, I need to know. I need to know what level everybody's on." Like I say about simplifying and simplifying this down and lowering the playing field. I need to know where everyone's at to simplify that. Like
Mm-hmm.
I've got questions that are asked of me that, they're afraid to ask because like they're the most simple question, like and they won't ask because they see the PhD at the end of your name or whatever. And
Yeah.
I'm just like, that's where I was saying, like, some of these questions that they do ask, the people do ask of me, are good questions, but they feel afraid and threatened by your education. And that's why I'm like, no, that's where the gap, when I say bridge the gap, I think that's what we should do. And like I say, with your experience and your education level, you're bringing a credibility to this whole thing. Like, and I've quoted you a million times. What do you say? Bigfoot levels the playing field. I
Yeah.
mean, what other world would we be having this conversation about this kind of topic, getting this in depth and stuff?
Sure.
And
The one PhD, it stands for piled higher and deeper, is one response I have to that, and that's referring to the bullshit. But and my other educational joke is how many psychologists does it take to change a light bulb? It
a
it
lot.
a lot. It only takes one, but the light bulb really has to want to change.
Oh yeah.
And so, you know, all my education brings to the table is a unique perspective, I think, on science and how psychological science could be applied to the hunt for Bigfoot. Otherwise, I'm pretty much just a regular guy, Bigfoot researcher, like most people who have spent most serious researchers who have spent years with boots on the ground and trying to figure this all out. Um, I don't. I promise no answers. I don't have all the answers, but
Well,
we'll
we can
see
just
what we
stop
can
right
figure out.
now. We can just cut
Okay.
this short. If you don't have the answers, we're done. Sorry, guys. And that was this episode. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No,
But
that's it.
as you
That's
know,
it.
that's how I am. I just free will everything. So
Sure. No, that's good. So that's my introduction.
yeah, your show, man, I thought it was pretty awesome.
Thank you.
I got onto it. I really grasped the idea also, for lack of better terms, you know, but that's also why me and you hit it off, because I was basically, and I don't want to pat myself on the back, but that's why I think we hit it off. I was basically doing what you were trying to get people to do out there in the field by documenting everything I did and drawing the pictures. And then when me and you linked up, man, we were doing just constant documentation. Our brains were sinking. And then we've been on several, I won't say, well, we've been out together quite a few times, and had different experiences each time. And, you know, we do that on a level of the fun. We do that on a level of the interest, of the curiosity. And then also, both of us, believe it or not, our minds can grasp the science of this thing too. And we try, and I feel like you're more of a believer than I am, even though I'm wholeheartedly a believer. And I think that balances our conversations out, because now I'm a little more skeptical, but it's only because it opened my eyes to more stuff. Because people make fun of me all the time. You don't know what you don't know. Well, obviously
Sure.
you don't know what you don't know. So like, you know, when I get into all the, you know, the Bigfoot stuff, I'm in it this way, but then I'm like, well, what is this? I didn't know what was going on over here. And that's where me and you were trying to bridge that gap of what's going on, and you're educating me, and vice versa. And like, again, that's why we linked up. You're there, I'm here. I can get on the ground while you're there. I can send you info. We've real time investigated through the phone, and we've actually been on investigations, and we've had shared experiences that you've talked about on your show. And like you said, they were the exact same moment, but different experiences.
The tree fall, I think, comes to mind immediately. Both of us sitting, me on one side of your car, you on the behind the driver's side, a tree fall behind us. But that's about all we could agree upon in terms of what we perceived. We each perceived the how many trees it was and what happened in a slightly different way. And I think that's an awesome example of perception and how two people sitting beside each other can have the same experience and perceive them in different ways.
And also, to add to that, where you went back, there was other people that you guys were hanging out with,
Yeah.
and they were in a different location, and you guys just happened upon them and had a conversation, and they were like, "Oh no, there was people coon hunting back there, and those were gunshots." Well,
Gunshots.
you know, we were doing our thing, they were doing their thing, and they perceived it one way, and we perceived it another, even though our perceptions differed. So that's totally different in there. But they put that in your head also. Whereas I didn't have that in my head when I went home. It was two trees fell, you know, yada yada. There was no coon hunting because I didn't run into those guys where you did. So I wonder if that altered our perception or our memory of it there too. But I've heard you retell it. It's the same as what I
Yeah.
experienced too, you know, but are we experiencing the same thing, or are we experiencing two different things at the exact same time?
Boy, phenomenologically, I think we were experiencing the same thing.
Because
Phenomenal.
we wanted it.
No, I think because we were in the right place to hear it happen.
I agree. Yeah, I fully agree. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I hate to sound authoritative, but I'm pretty certain those weren't gunshots.
No,
I'm 100% certain they weren't gunshots.
Yeah, I will not. I'm not there to tell what other people experience, but I will tell you, no, they were not gunshots. At least not a gun I've ever heard where it, sounded like a tree falling. If that's a new gun, then perhaps, I'm not into guns that well, but maybe.
Yeah, and not sure that we're here to tell stories, but
Hey, we're whatever we want to do, brother. You open up, let's talk. Because I got questions. Like I said, I've got my own questions. I've got other people, when they found out you were coming on, they had questions from the simplest to the greatest. And we have no time limit. And there's no one telling me what to do or what not to do. So we're good, whatever.
So I think maybe, I'm not sure, I don't recall, Craig, if it was the day before or day after that when we went to that cemetery, checking out that cemetery. At that cemetery, I went in there with about 75% charge on my phone. Took about 5
Yeah, I remember
pictures.
because we both checked that because we're both.
Yeah,
we talk. Yep.
And after 6 years of doing this, that's the first time I experienced a battery drain while doing an investigation. And then the next stop down the road, I don't know what, mile down the road, if that, when we pulled into that kind of cul-de-sac with the trees that had been pushed over and pushed to one side. And no sooner we get out, well, you get out because you move faster than I do.
2.5 miles.
2.5 miles?
Exactly 2.5 miles. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yep.
Yeah. Began to hear this kind of pretty rapid cadence. And so I don't know why we didn't go over that rise to check that out to see what was there in hindsight.
Well, we did, but later.
But then
that's where you actually heard that's the same location, but we were about a quarter mile in that you got whistled at.
Yeah, that's where I was going with this. We walked down the trail there, and my dog Hoss sniffed up some scat that was covered by a leaf. And then because of my physical limitations, I had to sit and take a break, and you kind of took Hoss out and went forward. And that's the first, and I was whistled at. And on one hand, it sounded like a whistle, but it didn't, something about it just didn't seem like a bird whistle. Although, the first association was to a bird whistle. Something about it just didn't sound right. And I was tempted to get up and kind of walk back there from where I heard the bird whistle. I didn't, because I didn't want to risk going off trail. But about a week later, I was watching a documentary on Bigfoots in Alaska, and they mentioned that in Alaska, the Bigfoots use bird whistles to lure people in to attack them. So I ended up, not to say that that's what was going on, but I was a little bit relieved that I chose not to check that out once I heard that.
My buddy's got us covered now.
I saw that.
Like I said last show, hey, we're covered, brother.
Yeah.
Not that we had this at the time, or we would have knew what to do with it, or we would even have, I think it's funny. I remember one of our first conversations, and I wanted to do a show on it, and I wanted to bring it up, was what you carry in your pack. And one of the first things you told me, I mean, it was a long list, but in bold letters, capitalized, was a change of underwear.
Yeah.
And that would definitely, everybody can talk what they want to talk, but, very well could happen, we both know people that have told us firsthand accounts. So, yeah. Carry a change of underwear.
And I think most importantly, firsthand accounts of it not on their first encounter. I know a lot of people who have had multiple Class A encounters with no bodily function release, and then they have one and it happens. And that's the nature of our nervous system and the fight flight response. We don't necessarily have control over if or when that happens.
Right. Yeah, we've talked about that a few times. In that same area, that exact location that you were whistled in, maybe, well, where me and Hoss went down the trail when I told you where we found that stuff. That's where I got huffed at, or the release of air or whatever. And I told you my fight flight was, I was actually on the phone with you telling you what happened. And you were like, "Are you okay?" Like we both agreed later what was going to happen if I wasn't,
Yeah.
But my response was, "Hey, this is happening. I'm going to assess the situation and leave." Like I said before, like I didn't freak out. I didn't run. I texted you. I was like, "We're packing the gear." I walked away. Then I had my release. My not my bowels or anything like that. Just my
yeah.
But which I never even put all that together until now, man. That area is that's the hot and heavy that we talk about. That I talk about a lot when I talk about one of the ridges that I've got my locale going down on. That's one of them. I've got a lot of the sightings that I've not talked about. I just did that in the last episode, and we'll see how that goes. But a lot of them, they're right there. So they coincide with everything that me and you've experienced there.
Wow. And that, you said you had that release, not necessarily a bladder and bowel release, but kind of just that
like an endorphin, I guess. I just all right, what's going on? Is something coming at me or is not? That was my kind of, all right, now we're on level playing field. I can see. I left the area, which, like I said, I talked to a mutual friend of ours, and she explained it in the best way and exact way that I felt about it, which was crazy. Did you hear that?
Yeah, I have
That
my
was
phone.
me. I don't know. There we
Okay.
go. You thought you were going to be the technical one.
No, I turned off my phone. That's why I was wondering.
But anyway, I don't know how to turn that off. So, guys, that's what happens, But so I lost her where we were going. So let's kind of go a different direction. Unless you want to lead this, go ahead.
No, I don't want to lead. I just wanted to make a point about that release, as you were referring to.
Yeah.
It's the excitatory portion of our autonomic or automatic nervous system that gets us revved up. Pupils constrict, breathing gets more shallow and rapid, gets us ready to fight or flight, flee or fight. But when you feel that kind of letting go, that's the parasympathetic or the off switch to that fight flight response. And that's the calming switch. And those are the two parts of our nervous system that are involved in that fight flight response.
So I'm glad that you said this, because in your show you touched on this a lot. You went really in depth in it, and I think it lost a lot of people. And I think, and that's another thing where I say sometimes people just don't have the verbiage to communicate back to one another. So I understand everything you're saying, but until you said it right then, I didn't realize that I didn't understand what you were saying, if that makes any sense.
Okay.
So when I say that, I thought that the fight flight, I understand everything you're saying about it, right? Except for this portion. I thought it would be instantaneous. The second that this thing huffed at me, I feel like I should have had my fight flight response then. Instead, I went into, which I've done it several times. I was calm. I was like, something's happening. I calmed down. I walked away. I did walk away quickly. Then I got down. And turned around and faced everything. When nothing followed me, that's when I had my release.
So
I was scared, but I was assessing. Like, I knew it was a release. It wasn't charging. I knew it wasn't. So maybe it wasn't a fight flight response. Then I guess maybe I didn't fully trigger that. I would just ride on that adrenaline fence. Yeah. Maybe that's what happened.
Two issues. One, not all fight flight responses are going to look the same. You know,
okay.
The first thing that happens is an increase in arousal, and but a fight flight response doesn't have to be pooping in your pants or having a panic attack or on the verge of a panic attack. I hate to say degrees, but what it involves, what the full-blown fight flight reaction involves, is a threshold. So as long as, you just described kind of modulating that tension that you were feeling inside of your body, or I'm not sure what emotion you would attach to that, be it fear or anxiety or whatever the case. But then you kind of centered yourself. You brought yourself, you were already below that full-blown threshold, but doing that brought you down so that you didn't have this full-blown fight flight response, if that makes any sense.
Now, some of that, and you hear a lot of people talk about this, a lot of people, and this corresponds with every field of cryptid, at least the cryptids that I'm aware of, or anything. And you're even part of this group, and I won't categorize you as woo or whatever, because I won't say that I'm woo or whatever, but we all, and you've talked about calming yourself and bringing yourself down. So what do you say the second you walk into the woods when you're going on an investigation? There's a thing you do. What do you do? And it's not the meditation that you talked about on your show. You say something and physically do something, right?
Yeah. It's been so long. Go ahead.
Well, you don't even have to share.
No, I don't mind sharing that
thing. But like I say, just the question that I have is, you say one thing, I do one thing, and someone else does another thing. Everybody does something, but our minds are all in a different state of awareness or whatever. Because what you're about to say or what you're about to do or explain is similar to what I do, but totally different for two totally different reasons.
So the purposes are different.
Well, I don't know, but I think our purpose is the same, but for different reasons. Our purpose is the same for different reasons. I do the same thing, but it's for my peace of mind, and my just experience. And what I think that you do is, which I'll let you explain, but you're doing it in expectation. Well, I won't say expectation, that might be the wrong word, but you're doing it steering yourself toward that direction. Now, if you want to go ahead and expand on that and explain.
Sure. And this is actually a blend. I think I'm not sure where I found out, but the words I use is wata or tawa, which is welcome, brother, or brother welcome. And I put my hands on my chest and I say my name, John. I repeat wata. And then this is something that I learned from Rick Raley's, who's a very well-known longtime Bigfoot researcher, BFRO researcher. And honestly, the first time I saw him do this, I got to admit, I kind of snickered to myself. But not being one to ever be afraid to ask questions, once I asked the question and he responded, I understood it. So he stood facing one direction with his arms out. You can't see me holding my arms out by their side.
Yeah.
And then he just begins
like taking it all in, like a Jesus pose or whatnot.
Yeah. And then he just slowly began to to rotate in a circle
Mm-hmm.
and began to say things like, "Hello, friends. Um, we're here. We're here to meet you and get to know you. We're not here to harm you. Um, we have an interest in knowing you and understanding you. Um, we mean you no harm. We only wish to interact with you. We would appreciate it if you would interact with us." And any kind of welcoming explanation about why you're there and your intentions. And he's speaking this as he's turning in a slow circle continuously. And that's generally the first thing that I do when I arrive at any site we're going to be
You're bringing
squatching.
yourself at one with the situation and calming yourself and not bringing any ill intent or anything like that. But you're basically asking to see them.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas when I go in the woods, I'm going in the woods like, yeah, I'm going to have my Bigfoot experience, but also, like I talk about all the time, man, I'm just having an experience. I
Right.
go out, the second I get out of that car, done with it, and I'm just out there. I'm having it, but I do go through my own personal. It's not the same mantra or creed or whatever that certain people do, and I know we have a mutual friend that also has something that they say, and several people have shared this. They do the similar thing every time. Mine is different each time because I'm curious. You do this every time. I saw you do this.
Mm-hmm.
I don't do this. I intentionally sometimes go into the woods doing this. Sometimes I go into it with a different intent in my mind. And sometimes I go into it intentionally trying to be upset. I know that sounds stupid, but to see what kind of different experiences I have, sometimes I psych myself up where I'm scared to death to go into an area, and I go into that area to see the experience, and then I'll go into another time. I'm like, man, this ain't nothing. I'm going in here to look for if the leaves have changed colors or whatnot. And each time that I do this, I have my own experience, and each time it's a different experience. But in the big picture of things, man, they're all really actually could be, depending on who you speak to or talk to or classify it as, they could be Bigfoot experience.
Yeah. So you're saying you go into it with a different intention each time?
I won't say each time, but yeah, like for instance, when I first heard the mantra, or that might not be the right word, the chant, the saying, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Because like I said, some people say the exact same thing, and they also, other people use that same phrasing. Also, other people paraphrase it or whatever, but they say that each time, and each and every time they go into the woods, they say that. Now, I might go into the woods. Like, for instance, I'm lucky and I have, we all know, I've got a good support group. I can go anytime I want pretty much. So we'll just simplify it. If I go 4 times a month, for instance, I'll go 3 times and I'll go in there and I'll say the same thing. And I've heard a different word, and I've heard that it's Cherokee, and a mixture of English and Cherokee words, and that was the word that was told to me. And sometimes I go in there and I chant that. Sometimes I say it out loud, and see that experience. Sometimes I go in there and I just use my mind and I say it. Sometimes I go in there and I say it multiple times in my mind, and I'll turn around and if somebody filmed me, I'm probably the goofiest looking dude ever walking through the woods because of the things I do. But
Yeah.
I'm trying to have any experience, and then the next, say the 3rd or 4th time, I'll go in there and I'll just be like. I brought it up on a podcast, and I realized after listening back to it, it sounded like I was just bragging about my physique, and that was not what I meant. It just came out that way. But like I say, some of my experiences, I'll go in there and I'll intentionally push myself physically so that my entire experience is different.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you really listen, and I'm just thinking of this just now, I didn't know why I did it, but I was just trying to gather all this evidence and gather all these different experiences. But as I'm thinking of it now, everyone that has seen a Bigfoot, not every single one of them has walked through the exact same park with the exact same cane, with the same piece of beef jerky and everything. Some people are running through the woods, so their mindset's different. Some people, so I'm trying to bring that experience. I'm trying to do too much at once, but
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that until as we speak. And that's what I like about these conversations.
Sure. Yeah. I also don't think
And ill intent is not the right. I don't mean ill intent like I'm trying to wish them harm or whatever. It's more like I don't care about the Bigfoot. I'm going to see how much I can sweat, how many calories, how fast I can
Sure,
go. That kind of intent, not a Bigfoot
sure,
experience.
sure. I think back to my question to you, or my reflection to you about purpose. Um, I need to reflect on this, but I never thought about doing that for my sake. I never thought about doing that to make me feel more comfortable. I do
You did it for
that
them.
for the sake of the Bigfoot. And
So I
go
keep
ahead.
interrupting you, but you knew this was going to happen. So you think they're people?
Not necessarily. Oh, and so the punchline or the end of that story is after he finished doing that, I, I'm pretty good at ask not. I'm pretty good at saying things and not and asking questions that I probably shouldn't. So I just spoke up and I said, Rick, do you really think they understand English? Are you telling me you do this because you think Bigfoots are understanding the words that you're saying? And he said, no, John, I'm not saying, nor do I think they necessarily understand the words I'm saying, but I think they understand my intentions.
And by him vocalizing it, that was his way of expressing his intent.
Yes.
So that answers the question, do you think they're people? I'm glad that I interrupted you because my next thing was if you don't agree, which our mutual friend believes they're a type of people, and that's a whole like it's a family tree. It's not a woo or a biological. This thing splits and
Mm-hmm.
branches. This thing goes crazy. But our friend is convinced that they are a type of people that they can speak English. And if you listen to them speak, they sound exactly like this, and they have more experience than you and I combined. If what they say is true, but at the same time, when you express an intent, it doesn't have to be a people. I was going to ask, at the very least, you think they're a conscious being. So consciousness would be involved. Just same as you walk up to a dog, you don't know that dog. Like Haas, before he met me, he had no clue how I was, but I went up to
Mm-hmm.
him with the intent of who I was and how I was, and I was a good human, and he instantly went to me, right? So he is conscious and aware of the fact of my aura, my being, my what I'm putting out there. So by even expressing that, whether they speak English or not, if you're expressing that intent, it could be the same thing. They're sentient or they're conscious. Whether they're a
So,
people, a great ape, or whatever, they have at least have that kind of intelligence to be able to.
yeah. So,
Are you just doing that?
or what? What was the last thing you
Or are
said?
you just doing it to be doing it because someone told you that's what you should do when you go Bigfoot?
That's part of it, honestly. That's part of it. I mean, like anyone who goes into this blind, um, I learned from others, and social learning and mimicking,
Mm-hmm.
is part of the learning process. So part of it was I learned it from others. The issue we're kind of dancing around um, is sentience versus self-awareness. And so a sentient being has a nervous system that allows it to feel pain and pleasure and hunger. It can feel and emote. Okay.
Like a
It
tree,
no tree doesn't have a nervous system. Okay.
but it can feel danger. There's been studies that show that plants can sense fear, they can show danger, and they can relate that to other transplant, and certain
Hmm.
trees through the ground can relate a forest fire, and they can tell other trees. So depending on where you're at, like, that's why I say there's gaps to be bridged, because you may not have been aware of that study. You know, like
I'm,
there's actual studies where people have put microphones and electrodes to plants and lit them on fire and tested that and cut them with scissors and tested that and recorded that response and then came at them with a lighter and watched the response before the lighter. It knew that pain was coming. It knew all that. This is, but that gets into where you're at. That I've talked about it before. We can go, when I said simplifying, we can simplify this or we can go really deep. As we're going deep, we can simplify it because I've always said you don't fully if you can't explain it to a 5-year-old, then you don't understand it.
Yeah.
And a lot of
I
people
would,
will disagree with me or whatever, but like you got to be able to understand it enough to break it down to whoever your audience is.
yeah.
And so that's where
So,
my questions arise. I'm not questioning your thoughts or
sure.
your processes. I'm just questioning. And I think that's where a lot of the infighting in the field is. People like me and you are asking questions, but they've never spoken to us to realize our intent. Like you
Sure.
bring up intent, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So let me see if I can respond to your tree question and point and and circle around back to sentience versus self-awareness. Um, One, I'd sure like to take a look at those studies and
Yeah.
the data behind them and the design behind them. I'm open to that possibility. I'm in the same way that I'm open to woo, but I want to see it proven scientifically. Okay.
I'll try and find you the links for those studies because
Um,
I thought they were pretty fascinating myself. They're old. They're old. They're not. I
yeah,
wouldn't say about the '80s, maybe. See, you
sure.
know,
Um,
most of the studies that I know of that are out there and kind of eccentric, a lot of that came with the fall of the Soviet Union. You know, they had all those
mm,
scientists had all that money and they didn't know what to do. They didn't belong to anyone, so they just researched and did whatever they wanted to do. They had no one to answer to, but they were
mhm,
actually doing research, but they didn't have the board of ethics or whatever, or
sure.
they had no one to answer to. Kind of like the show, kind of like where we're getting derailed. It was about Bigfoot, but now we're talking about the fall of the USS. No one
Yeah.
can tell me and you what to do, and that's the same what they were doing. So they were researching all kinds of stuff, and because of where it came from, it's not uh,
Mainstream.
mainstream and published. So it's out there, it's for everyone to know, but it's not like you
Yeah,
say you don't know, or like I say you don't know what you don't know. You
sure.
you had you knew exactly what you were going to say until I threw that at you. Now, like you said, you've got to reflect on that.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Um, that's okay. But back in undergraduate school, I read about this place called Finhorn. And there's an actual, it's out of publication, but you can find it. I'm sure you can find it on Amazon or other places. It's called The Magic of Finhorn. And Finhorn was a commune on the outer banks of Scotland. And all their natural soil was sand. And through working with nature spirits and mulching the soil, they were able to grow like award-winning roses on the outer banks of Scotland and have all these kind of huge tomatoes, huge squashes and pumpkins. And when they wanted to transplant a tree, the night before they were going to transplant it, dig it up, they would go and meditate and commune with the spirit of the tree and let it, similar to what I said about Bigfoot, let it know that they're doing it for its own good. It's being transplanted to a healthier place so it can thrive even more. We're just asking for your cooperation and understanding. And the next morning, when they would go to transplant that tree, they could just about pull it out of the ground. Depending on the size of the tree, they still might have to, do some digging. But the tree, it was almost as if the tree was allowing itself to be transplanted because it understood it was for its own benefit. So I guess that's kind of I want to see the science, but that's also part of my response to that. Again, similar to Wu, I think if we shut our mind down to such possibilities at first glance or initial glance because it doesn't fit our worldview. I don't think we're doing science anymore. And that's why I termed or coined the phrase incredulity bias, because if something is so far out of our model of the world, we just want to say, well, what the hell? There's no way that could possibly happen. And I think that's a bias we've got to guard against. And I think it's a bias the woo community in general suffers from. I'm not.
I think just the term woo we need to get rid of the term woo, because I think it's just a misunderstanding. I don't think a lot of this woo stuff, the disappearing or whatever, you could say that's woo, but you could also break that down into what you were saying about the trees with frequencies and harmonizing and all that and vibration. And if they're putting out that same intent with that same frequency, then that's going to vibrate and that tree's going to understand. So you could make that argument with the cloaking and the disappearing of Bigfoot, but that's not woo. That's way out there scientific, and that it's documented that it's possible. So people have got to learn what woo is and what woo ain't,
Yeah. And what if it's telepathy on steroids and they're not going anywhere? They're just changing your perception.
That's what I was getting at with I wanted to touch on in one of the episodes. I talked about the pineal gland. When you talk about what they eat and what they do to calcify the pineal gland and what they can see and what you can manifest with your mind, because it's known fact that if you're not calcifying your pineal gland, you can manifest, you can astral travel, you can do all these things. And if they've never experienced this and they're so at one with nature and don't have any stress over the traffic or the commute or work or whatever, then who's to say they're not so balanced that they are just not disappearing, but you think they are because they meditate so well that they don't breathe, they don't do anything. And it's just like, or they move so fast that you think that they flash because that's where people don't understand. And I know this has nothing to do with what we were talking about, but like I said, you signed up for this. So like I've talked about the way our eyes work, the way they flash. It's not when you record something, you're not recording a constant thing. It's actually framed, and that's how our mind's working. And when we see it, and our mind is going to pause because I call it hitting the reset button. You have no idea what you're doing. Boom. I seen it. And then that split millisecond that you reset, it's gone. It didn't disappear. It just moved while you were in shock in whatever. That's my theory. Like I say, I think they're flesh and blood. I don't know.
Okay.
But
so to bring this back to sentience, so obviously mammals are sentient, but they're now assigning sentient status to octopuses, to fish, and some other sea creatures that a lot of people wouldn't think as sentient. But one step up from sentient is self-aware. And in at least monkey models, the way they've tested to prove that monkeys are self-aware is that they recognize themselves in a mirror. And they recognize themselves as themselves and not another creature. For example, I've seen Haas do it, and I just saw a video on another dog doing it, looking at it, their own reflection in the window. He's barking at it as if there's a dog right in front of him that's agitating him. Well, that's not consistent with self-awareness. Monkeys are not monkeys. I'm sorry. I think it's chimpanzees. Chimpanzees have been shown to use mirrors for self-grooming. They will look at themselves in the mirror and then begin to groom themselves by looking at their reflection. And that's what's thought to, or that's how self-awareness was proven. So I have no doubt Bigfoot is sentient. I don't know. Would they pass the same test? My bias is they're probably self-aware as well, but I have no no real evidence or logic or reasoning to base that on, because so much of what I think we attribute as intelligence or curiosity, I think could probably just be instinct, and we're assigning, we're anthropomorphizing, we're assigning human characteristics that may look like intelligence, but very well could be instinctual. So if pushed, if cornered, I guess I would guess that Bigfoots are self-aware as well. And I'm not even sure why we're talking. Oh, what do I believe they are was the question. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question, because I don't think we've done the research to have that answer. I
All
think
right.
we got to bring science to the table to get that answer, and I don't think that's been done.
So I can go really deep in what you just said. We can talk about densities, first density, second density, third density, fit, all the way up, and that's in
I'm not
conjunction
sure
with.
what you mean by density.
That's why I said we would have to get really deep.
Oh,
Uh,
deep. Okay, density. Gotcha.
so basically what I'm saying with density is density creatures. There's a belief that you're saying self-aware and sentient are two different things. Well, also there's another belief that goes along that says that there are different densities. They're kind of like different chakras of the body, but the densities are like, say for instance, we're a third density being. We are human beings. We're in a three-dimensional world, and it's going to get confusing. We don't have to go there, because like I said, we've been on this for 45 minutes and I've got a whole list of things to talk about. We need to get multiple episodes of this. But densities, so basically we're a third density. If we could become something more than that and meditate and become a light being that's been proven to exist, then you would step up to a fourth or fifth density being. So that's where your angels or your aliens or extraterrestrials are existing. And we're in the third density, and that's what's going on in the world. We're moving into a fourth density because the planets where we totally different topic, but trees would be of trees, dogs, animals, living creatures. Some would be a second density because they live, they do care for their young. They do know that they need to put others in front of themselves. Like you've seen dogs protect their young or whatever. They don't know why they're doing that, but that's their instinct to do. So that's what they call a second density being. We do it because it's our nature to do it. But a fourth density being would not be to protect my family, but protect all families. And then, the fifth density would be, it goes way deep. We don't have to get into that. So I've got some questions. Okay. Let's just start it off since we're in this hot and heavy. Do you think Bigfoot eats poop for the nutrients? Is it possible?
Wow, I've never
exactly.
I've never even thought about that.
I mean, think about it though. Honestly, think about it. You've seen your dogs do it. We've seen other animals do it. But do you think Bigfoot are doing it for, say, instance, certain scat is good for gardens right out of it because it's nutrient rich, where others has got to be put in a compost. So what if a Bigfoot's like, hey, we pick up this rabbit poop, it's good to eat, pop it like M&Ms or something? I mean, has anyone looked into that?
Buddy, I have no, if the question had been, does Bigfoot eat dirt and rocks, I might have been willing to venture an answer to that, but I have no clue whether Bigfoot eats his poop. Sorry.
No, I mean, but honest, it's a silly question. But
no,
like
it's not.
I'm silly, but it is a serious question. What do they eat? They can't just eat trees, or they can. I mean, great apes, they only eat or herbivores or whatever.
Herbivores, sure.
But what do they eat? I mean, is there correlation with turtles? Do they eat turtles, or do they eat deer? I mean, what do they eat? They've got to be nutrient rich. They got to find their nutrients somewhere, their calories somewhere. And I can't help but think that this nutrient rich manure, scat, whatever of certain animals wouldn't be something they might seek out. I don't know. I just had that thought today.
Yeah. Boy, I don't know if there's been any systematic investigations of the content of Bigfoot scat.
Why not?
Yeah, but that might be some time well spent. I know I've looked at some scat where you can see, um, you know, corn, berries. Um, I don't think I've ever come across any kind of scat that you saw hair, for example, in the scat, another creature's hair. As I understand it, they're omnivores, probably um, leaning a little bit more to the herbivore side because it's the resource that's most readily available in their environment to them, and requires very little foraging energy to get those nutrients. Her, herding herd of deer into a field and running around and breaking some legs and then catching another one and breaking some legs is a high activity, high calorie kind of activity. And so, I think they probably got to work harder for their meat. And so I think that's why I believe they would lean towards the herbivore side, just because of and I'm not saying they're herbivores. I believe they're omnivores. I think there's some suggestion from the structure.
Opportunistic.
Yeah. Opportunistic carnivores more
Yeah.
so than anything else.
Well,
I'm good.
multiple questions. So with you saying that perhaps that they're only herbivores, I know that's not what you said, but when you brought that part up, that would lend credence to what I was saying about calcifying our pineal glands and being more at one with nature, because there's also that group of people. We know someone, for instance, that don't eat meat. And they say that by not eating meat, you're actually more at one with nature. You're more at one with this. When you start eating meat, that's when you become more primal and you're more angry and all this. So that could lend to multiple things, is what you say there. But also, I have another question that when we say opportunistic or maybe not, I just thought of this. My mind is weird. Do you think, I'm trying to think how to phrase it. So, there's tribes, Arab tribes that still do it to this day, that hunt with falcons or whatever, hawks. They train them to hunt for them, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you think, and this is the reason I say this, is because there's a correlation with Bigfoots and owls. They're trying to sound like owls, or there's always owls around Bigfoots or whatever. And you're saying they might be opportunistic. If they're a people or if they're a sentient, whatever, you've heard of these stories about them training wolves. Is there a chance they might be training owls to go at night and get them a mouse, a couple of mice, or varmint, whatever? I mean, I don't know. You brought the thought to my head just now as we're talking about it, and this is why I like this kind of format where we can actually speak.
Yeah, I guess I feel the need, especially given my bias towards science, I feel the need to give a disclaimer. What we're discussing is totally theoretical and totally
There's no evidence of none of
speculative.
this. This is just in my head. These are things.
Right.
That's the whole point of this show. Is I can't be the only one with this, but I want.
Sure.
There's so much in here. I got to get it out and let it.
Sure.
And if people have questions, not everybody has the opportunity to speak to you like this, candidly like this.
Okay.
I mean, not everybody is as silly as this Bigfoot eat poop. I'm for it.
So I forget what I wanted to say. Oh, about the question of owls. Again, another I don't know. Just this week, I interacted with somebody on Facebook who is one of these folks who has easy and regular access to these creatures. And he was claiming that I have heard that Bigfoots work in concert with coyotes.
Mhm.
But this
That was what
guy
I was
was,
getting at. Yeah.
yeah, this guy was taking it one step further and saying that they actually train a group of, I don't know why 5 was the number, but they have 5 coyotes that they train to hunt with them, and they work together in the hunt. And for some reason, an individual Bigfoot handles 5 coyotes. And so, again, I don't know that. But you know, the frequency. I think a lot of self reports, and certainly one of my Class B encounters. Coyotes cutting loose and hearing a Bigfoot roar or growl seem to go hand in hand. They frequently happen together. So it's hard not to associate Bigfoots with coyotes. Or you brought up the owls. Could that be an owl, or could that be a Bigfoot mimicking an owl? I've never heard an owl call that I thought was a Bigfoot mimicking an owl in the way that bird whistle that I heard when we were out together. That just didn't. There's something unnatural about that. I've never heard an owl call that sounded unnatural in that regard. But it's certainly within my realm of possibility to be open to, could they be symbiotically working together? Could they have an unintentional cooperative relationship with each other on a hunt? Um, Again, training them to hunt is one step above that. But you know, I don't think it's an accident that you hear them together as frequently happens. My first Bigfoot, in fact, my only Bigfoot howl that I've ever heard, um, was, it sounded like a single dog barked. Then a whole pack, I don't know how many in the pack, of coyotes cut loose and just went on for about 15 or 20 minutes. But about 5 minutes into that commotion is when I heard this big roar piercing above the whole pack of coyotes that was identified, and I do believe was a Bigfoot roar. So I'm not unique in that experience. And so they seem to run together. To what degree it's a cooperative relationship or not, I'm not sure. Think of, is it jackals or not jackals? What's that other dog-like creature in Africa that kind of almost laughs or
The
barks?
hyena. I
The
was thinking
hyena.
more like the bird on a rhinoceros's butt, or a alligator's head, or
Sure.
the fish that swims under sharks to
The
clean. That's what
remora,
I was
yeah.
thinking you were going with that.
Well, and it could be that those are true examples of a symbiotic relationship.
They're both doing
Tech,
something for each other.
yeah, textbook. Um, could that be going on with Bigfoots? It could be. Where I was going with the hyenas was, what do hyenas do? They follow the apex predators. And when the apex predators take down a meal, then the hyenas move in on the apex predator to try and steal their their kill.
See, I was thinking exact opposite. They were using the coyotes to expend the energy to kill them, and then they come in with their dominant size to take what they wanted from it.
That
That's what I was
they
thinking while you were talking.
okay, sure. I think I don't see anything wrong with that possibility either. Um, I think the question in my mind is, again, what's the intention? Is that an instinct? Is that a thought out plan? What's the is there any cognition at all behind that, or is it just natural instinctual behavior? I don't know. Not going to figure that out without investigating.
Hey, yeah, I think we've been on here for about an hour. I think let's go ahead and cut this off, and we'll do a two-parter. If you want to come back, we'll get some questions and get some people talking. Maybe I can think of some more questions designed, and we can go. Both of us are bad to go long-winded answers, so I knew
Yeah,
this would go
yeah.
long. But if we can, are you willing to come on again? Or
Sure, sure. Absolutely.
awesome.
Anything I do, bud. You know, I'll support you in any way I can, and it doesn't hurt me either.
Well, I sure do appreciate it, brother. And like I said, I'll let you get out of here. We'll stay in touch. I'll try and get some more questions. I've got a lot more. My phone was going off the whole time because I didn't put the notice out in time because our scheduling is just whenever we can do it. But
Sure.
I mean, who's to say it won't be tomorrow? Who's to say it won't be next week? Whatever our scheduling can do, and as long as everything keeps going good, I'm for it. As long as you are.
Yeah, I'm retired, so my schedule is pretty wide open.
All right, buddy. Well, I sure do appreciate it. Do you got anything you want to say before we get out of here?
Just thank you for having me on my show to allow me to express my ideas and biases. I could jump behind a pulpit and preach on several things for an hour, but I'll resist that temptation. I remain hopeful that, be it the way I've laid out in my book or through some other fashion, we can prove Bigfoot scientifically prove Bigfoot as a species without having to take a body. If we take one, we're going to need a second or a third. And when there's other pathways to get there, I don't think we need to be doing that.
I agree. I'm with you. I think I'm not knocking on the people that are pro kill. That's just not my style. But I do agree there has to be someone out there to do it if that's going to be the case. But you know, that's a whole other topic that we could get into for hours.
Sure.
So again, I just want to reach out, man. I appreciate everything you've done. I appreciate everything you've done for me, the contacts you made for me, the support you've given me, the countless hours we spent on the phone together where you've put up with my stupid questions and interrupting you and everything. But I definitely appreciate it. Having someone like you with the knowledge that you have to bounce my ideas off of. And I love watching your brain work. Like I say, this is why I want to do this kind of format to see brains work, not to have a scripted thing, not against anyone that does. Again, I'm not a podcaster. I want to get knowledge out. I want to get share because I feel like there's people asking me questions and I'm answering them. And if somebody's asking me, then there's somebody else with the same question. And I think the only way to do it is to do what we're doing and share it and everything, guys. But again, thank you, Dr. John. We'll be in touch. And guys, any questions, reach out, squatcher1222@gmail.com. Hit me up. Anything, guys. We'll talk about it. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.